So good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 15th, 2020. The time is 9:02 a.m. I'm officially calling this meeting to order. It is our weekly community development meeting, which includes 2 hearings, as well as some signings. Attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Fillios. And I'm going to ask our Nancy if she would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, then. Do we have any potential conflicts of interest? Okay. I don't know if I announced it, but attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Fillios. No conflicts of interest. So our first hearing, and it is a public hearing with a potential action item, case number ZON20-0001, Marty and Paulette Eberly, to complete a zone change from agricultural to rural on approximately 40 acres of land. And I would defer at this point to Director Callahan.
Commissioners, Vlad Finkel is on Zoom and is ready to proceed. Go ahead, Vlad.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. As you just stated, this is a request to rezone two parcels of land totaling approximately 40 acres in size from agriculture to rural. The request is located on the prairie, specifically at the intersection of Meyer Road and Hayden Avenue. The less than 20-acre parcel of land has an existing house and some outbuildings for purposes of farming operations, while the eastern 20 acres is currently vacant. The comprehensive plan designation is transitional for this area, and the property is also located within the shared tier of the city of Post Falls, Hayden, and Rathdrum area of city impact. The ACI requirements require that we, or state that we as a county must solicit comments from these cities and give them up to 30 days to comment on their request, which staff has done. The property is relatively flat, as you can see from the adjoining public rights of ways. The intent of this rezone is to be able to subdivide the 40 acres into 5-acre parcels in the future. Staff solicited comments from a variety of other agencies with jurisdiction and received comments of no concern or comments at this time. However, there may be some development requirements at the time of a platting request. During the first public comment period for the hearing examiner, we received 1 comment that was neutral, 3 opposed, and 1 in support. There were a number of people that came out to provide testimony at the hearing examiner's meeting, which was conducted on August 20th. And subsequent to that meeting, Community Development received a recommendation for approval. During the second public comment period for the Board of County Commissioners, we received a total of 6 comments in support of this request. Staff also supports the request, as well as the hearing examiner, because the intended subdivision in the near future is consistent with the surrounding conditions in the area. While the adjoining parcels of land are not zoned rural, the parcels to the south, a few blocks away, are zoned rural, and a majority of parcels in the area are 5 acres to 10 acres in size. Therefore, the rezone and a subsequent subdivision in the future would not result in adverse impact, but will be consistent with the existing conditions in the area. And that concludes my brief presentation. I stand for any questions that you have at this time.
Vlad, I have a couple questions. Did you say 4 or 3 were opposed? The screen kind of said both.
It was different. It says 4 in parentheses 3.
I'm sorry, that's an error on my part. That's
Okay.
I believe that it was originally, let me double check. That was 3 in opposition. That was an error on my part.
Okay, no worries. How did the other agricultural zone properties become 5 and 10 acres?
That's a good question. It's likely that these parcels were established prior to the establishment of zoning designations, or it's likely that they were adjusted at some point in the past. As you know, agricultural zone does not allow for subdivision on land, with the exception of the 20-acre exemption provision that we have in our code.
Commissioners, if I may,
Yeah,
as a
please.
general rule throughout the county, the zoning hasn't changed dramatically since 1973. So the presumption would be these 5-acre lots were created before then.
Vlad, the lot immediately to the west, is that zoned ag?
Correct, sir.
Okay, so that's a 20-acre minimum.
The minimum lot size in the agricultural zone is 5 acres. However, as I said, it's prohibited. There's a prohibition for division of land in ag zone, and therefore, the only exemption to create parcels is a 20-acre minimum requirement.
Right, okay, fine. Bill, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So who's going to be speaking? Rand, go right ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rand Wickman for the record. My address 2992 East Gotham Bay Road. I'm pleased to be here representing the Eberlys in this zone change request. Thanks, Vlad, for your introduction there. So I'll spare you much of the background there. But to address the question right out of the gate here about the 5 and 10 acre parcels, back in the olden days when I started, the county allowed free splits of any size as long as they met the minimum lot size of the zone. You got 4 free splits from an original parcel back in as late as the 90s, actually.
95.
And so that's how many of these 5 and 10 acre parcels were created. And we also had somewhat of a dark chapter in our zoning history where we allowed what we called Idaho code plats, which were 10 acre parcels to be created, any number that were exempt from the subdivision process and exempt from review. All you had to do was just file a plat. And so some of these 10 acre parcels were created by the Idaho code plat process. Some of the 5s were created through free splits back before we changed that to be a 20 acre minimum. So for whatever reason, this area had more than its fair share of that. And so what you see here is there's an area that is about 1.5 square miles of these mostly 5 and 10 acre parcels. The 4 major cities of the prairie, Rathdrum, Post Falls, Hayden, and Coeur d'Alene, are each a mile or less away in the 4 different directions. The area, as you can see from the map, mostly zoned ag. There have been a number of zone changes to rural in the last couple of decades. And if you go out a little farther on this map, you see, more areas of rural zoning. So this area was once the middle of a large agricultural area, as I'm sure you all know. Those of us that have been here a while remember the great plumes of smoke from the annual field burning. There was so much of that it took a week or 2 of burning to burn all the fields. That activity is nearly non-existent now. The cities have consumed much of that ag land with their growth, and it appears that trend will continue. In 1973, when this property was originally zoned ag, that was the logical designation for it. It fit with the surrounding area and what was believed to be the long-term direction. Nearly 50 years have passed, and boy, have things changed. There are some large agricultural lands left out there. You can see just to the west of this subject parcel, there's a irrigated tract there that's got a center pivot irrigation system on it. And they are, in my opinion, appropriately zoned ag parcels like that. I support maintaining that zoning on those agricultural parcels. The subject property here is not a large agricultural parcel. It's two 20-acre parcels. It's currently farmed, most of it, as a responsible way to maintain the property. But it's surrounded on three sides by residential uses on 5 and 10-acre parcels. The New Life Community Church is also a neighbor to the south, directly south there. I think you can see it in the photo there. The area has transitioned to a rural character, although the zoning is lagging behind that transition. This area is indistinguishable from other areas zoned rural in Kootenai County if you look at the uses and the lot sizes. The zone change will allow this owner to create a couple of additional 5-acre parcels similar to what exists around it. As Vlad indicated, none of the surrounding cities are opposed to the zone change. None of the other agencies have expressed concerns. Complies with the comprehensive plan. Hearing examiner has recommended approval. I think it warrants approval and hope you see it that way as well. And that's all I have for now, unless you have more questions of me.
Questions for Rand? No. None. Thank you, Rand. Okay. So we have a few folks here who have commented, and in no particular order. We have Mike Andrews in favor, but does not wish to speak. Okay. Tim Vollis, is it? Yes. Opposed, and you do wish to speak, sir? Yes. Come forward. Tim, your name and address, please.
Tim Vollis, 6659 West Orchard Avenue, Post Falls. I live kitty corner down in the next area, just to the south of this subdivision. My main concern is, first off, we're losing the prairie. It's going away because people are trying to subdivide everything. And we've got Hayden Lake and Post Falls are just trying to consume everything. And now Rathdrum is coming south more towards us with big subdivisions. And it's just eating the prairie up. And, you know, the 20-acre parcels, I can see going down to 10-acre parcels. But 40 acres, that's 8 extra wells on the prairie. That's 8 extra sewer systems on the prairie. And the traffic, I know the highway district didn't comment on this. Last night, 4 o'clock, there's another crash there. This is a weekly event. I live right there, and I used to be part owner in Schaefer's Towing. And it's a common place for us to go for accidents. The traffic backs up to the south of Orchard Avenue on a regular basis, and almost all the way up to the north to Emmanuel. So traffic is definitely a concern, whether the highway district says it is or not. You cannot, if you're going east and west and you try to turn north or south off of Hayden Avenue, you're taking your life into your own hands. It's a common, everyday, there's accidents there at least weekly. And I just don't want to see the prairie getting eaten up. We've got everybody on our road bought there for specific reasons. We're in 10-acre pieces. Our understanding was it couldn't be subdivided. Across to the east is, I believe it's Morrison's estate. Those are all 10-acre pieces over there that go north and south off of Orchard from Hutter to Meyer. Those are all 10-acre parcels, with the exception of one on Harvest that was when Peck had it, got it split somehow against their ordinances. And their ordinances, from talking to the people that live there, my neighbors, they're 10-acre parcels. They can't be split per their CCNRs. So anyhow, I'm opposed based on those reasons. Thank you.
Any questions for Tim?
So you're in a 10-acre parcel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And where is yours, Tim? You're
Mine
south?
Yeah, it'll be on the next hearing order. I border Mike's property, the dark road right to the
Through the
left.
middle
I'm the
there?
second property in on the north side of Orchard, west of Meyer Road.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have Margaret Cable, is it Andrews? In favor, does not wish to speak? Is that true? Okay,
So that's it.
and that's it. Okay, then. So nobody else wishes to speak? I guess we can move on.
Well, I guess Rand has a rebuttal.
Rand, did you want to rebut?
Thank you, Commissioners. I guess I would just again, reiterate, the Highway District has not expressed any concerns with this. I believe the intersection there, Hayden Avenue, actually all of Hayden Avenue, if our additional registration fee passes, Hayden Avenue is one of the projects that's on that list for improvements to that intersection. Again, that's an existing condition. The impact of the additional lots that would come from a minor subdivision, I would expect, on this property would be small enough that not only would the Highway District not require a traffic study, they wouldn't even require a trip generation letter. It doesn't generate the number of vehicle trips to even warrant additional review and scrutiny. And so the amount of traffic generated by that is within the margin of error of a traffic model and that sort of thing. So again, it's just not a significant impact. If this were 30 lots or something like that, or the potential for 30 lots, then certainly traffic is a legitimate consideration.
Okay, so when you mentioned earlier, Rand, that Hayden Road is on the list of projects, you're referring to those projects that the $50 fee, if it passes, would address?
That's great. Thank you for that clarification. Yes, Chairman, thank you. That is correct.
Okay. Any questions for Rand?
Do you have any idea when the subdivision will be applied for?
No, they've had conversations with the surveyor about it. I expect it will be soon, shortly thereafter. They're debating whether to do 2 or 3 lots, for example. And so, it doesn't lend itself to doing 8 lots there because of the location of the Eberle's house. But the question is, what do you do on that eastern parcel? They believed, you can see from the blue lines there,
Yeah.
they had believed that they had 2 5s and a 10 there, and it turns out that those were not created properly, and so prior to this zone change, we had to go back to two 20-acre parcels, and we clarified that in the assessor's records. The lines still show up on the county mapping, but they are 2 20-acre parcels. So right now, it's consideration of their son-in-law is Eberle's son-in-law is proposing, or their son-in-law is proposing to build a home on the property, and in order to do that, they wanted to do that on 5 acres, and that's really what started this whole discussion about a zone change, because that's what it takes to get there.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I do have a question. How long have the Eberle's owned it?
Quite some time, I believe. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's they've been there for some time. It's
Over a decade?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Any more questions for Rand? No? Okay, thank you, Rand. Okay, then. Anyone else for public comment? Tim, you want to come up again, sir?
Just a little clarification on what Rand just said. The original 20 acres that Marty is on, he's been on that for probably at least 15 years, if not more.
Okay.
And then he purchased the other 20 acres probably within the last 10 years.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, sir. Okay, then. Is there a motion to enter into deliberations?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh.
Yeah, go right
We
ahead.
have one person on Zoom that's not staff. I'd just like to touch base and make
Yeah, go
sure.
right ahead.
David Warnick, are you here for the next item, or did you want to speak to this item? That gives me cause to think he's for the next item.
Could be.
There is.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah.
Mr. Warnick, did you want to speak to this issue?
Okay, should we move on? Okay, then, motion.
Before we end deliberations, is that
Well, we're not in
Enter.
deliberations. The motion is to enter
to
into.
enter into, okay, I heard you say end. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I move that we close public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, entering into deliberations. Bill, did you want to?
Yeah, this is one of those that really kind of bothers me both ways. It bothers me because I don't like losing the prairie. I don't like how growth is going. I also don't like telling people what they can and can't do with their property as long as it's legal. So I'm kind of, it's a hard choice, and I just want to let you know, I really labored with this one after I read it, because if somebody said, you can't do this with your property, that would bother me if I said, the law says I can. And if somebody said, you're tearing up the prairie, you're building on it. Yes, they are. And it's not the prairie that it was 50 or 20 or even 15 years ago.
David, I have a question. Doesn't the comp plan kind of state that the prairie's going to first be built out and then outlying areas outside of that?
I wouldn't go so far as to say that, but what it does clearly allow for is this sort of development under these circumstances, and especially in a case where it's surrounded by existing similar development.
Right. And I guess there's going to be several developments to the north which are going to be single-family tract homes. So that density is going to be huge because they're hooked up to sewer. So keeping 5-acre rural characteristic, I'm more comfortable with than if they ask for this to be, 400 homes hooked up to sewer.
Seems entirely reasonable under these certain circumstances.
I do agree with Bill. I mean, I hate to see things carved up, but because the existing characteristics are very similar, and it sounds like he's not going to do the all 8 5-acre parcels anyway, so I don't have a good reason to deny it.
I have a question. I'm sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
That's it.
Okay. Vlad, I have a question for you. Earlier, you indicated that the minimum lot size for ag was 5 acres? Isn't that the minimum lot size for rural?
It is, but that's been in the code for, I think, since '73. It's just that what sets the agricultural district apart is what Vlad said.
Go ahead.
Subdivisions are not allowed. There are only exemptions, which allow you to do division of land outside of the subdivision process.
Okay.
And in that case, it's conceivable it could go down to 5 acres. One of the exemptions, for instance, is by will and estate planning, where you could divide up a hypothetical, this case, when you're ready to die, and then when you do die, your heirs could get the 5-acre parcels. That's an exemption outside of the subdivision process.
Okay, understood. Well, I guess it's my turn. As with Leslie and Bill, I share the same concern, and my co-commissioners are probably tired of hearing this, but I'm hearing it on a weekly basis. People are getting really upset at the level of growth because the infrastructure simply isn't keeping up. Of course, we do have the proposal before us. Well, it's the ballot measure for a $50 fee. What we're hearing, and it's premature at this point, is the trend tends to be against it. Meanwhile, we have extremely low registration fees, but if that doesn't pass, then that says that the last significant change to infrastructure occurred in the 70s, over 40 years ago. And so here we have a request to, once again, eventually, when subdivided, going to add more traffic and infrastructure that is struggling to keep up. But to, I guess to Leslie's point, it's difficult to deny. But I do want to make a statement because Director Callahan and I have gone over this. People presume or assume that they have the right to subdivide their property. No. Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court has upheld that that is not a fundamental right. It's not part of the bundle of rights. That right is really contingent upon the zoning and then, of course, the local jurisdictions. And so it's a very interesting discussion. Unfortunately, most people may not be aware of that or perhaps even don't agree with it. But in this case, I can see to the north, east, and south that we're already subdivided to as low as, what, 10 or 5 acres. So I have no reason to deny going forward when the subdivision request comes in. I'm going to take a very critical view of it, so I just want to state that right here and now. But I can't at this point, I can't at this point find any reason to deny it. Motion.
I move that we approve case number ZON 20-0001 for Marty and Paulette Eberl to complete a zone change from agricultural to rural.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and the motion is carried. Case number ZON 20-0001 is hereby approved. Thank you. David, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Moving on to item B, case number ZON 20-0005, Michael Andrews to complete a zone change from agricultural to rural on 2 parcels totaling 20.3 acres in size. Director Callahan, did you want to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. Vlad's queued up and ready to go.
Commissioners, give me a second to pull up the file and start with my presentation.
Not queued up.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Good morning, once again, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is another request in close proximity to the first application that you heard this morning, a request by Michael Andrews in case number ZON 20-0005 to rezone 2 10-acre parcels of land at the intersection of Orchard Avenue and Maya Road. This is located just to the south of the first application by Mr. and Mrs. Eberly. The request is for 2 parcels that are on the north and south side of Orchard Avenue, which is a private road. Maya Road to the east is a public road that both roads provide physical and legal access to the subject 10-acre parcels of land. The intent of this request is to rezone it and be able to subdivide it into 5-acre parcels. The end result, should the application be approved and the subsequent subdivision come forward, will have 4 5-acre parcels of land. As you can see, based on the zoning map, there are parcels to the south and east that are zoned rural, and they are 5 acres in size. There are other parcels to the northeast that are zoned agricultural, but are 5 acres as well. The comp plan designation for this property is transitional, and these 2 10-acre parcels are located in the area of city impact for the city of Post Falls, Hayden, and Rathdrum in the shared tier. These are the photos of the subject parcels in question. The northern piece has an existing shop, while the southern piece is currently vacant. Staff solicited comments from the agencies listed on the slide. We received no concerns or no comments at this time. However, some improvements may be necessary should the application for a subdivision be submitted for review. During the first public comment period for the hearing examiner's hearing, we received a total of 8 comments in opposition of the request. Those concerns were specifically related to traffic impacts associated with the request, and then a number of the existing parcels that are currently zoned agricultural that are 10 acres in size. So a little bit of a concern over the compatibility of upzoning the parcels and creating additional density. The hearing examiner heard this project on August 20th of this year and subsequently recommended approval. As we move forward with a second public comment period, the county received a lot more comments in reference to this request. There were a total of 36 comments in support of this application and 1 in opposition. I'd like to add that staff concurs with the recommendation by the hearing examiner. We as well do not see this application as spot zoning, even though the parcels immediately adjacent to the 2 10-acre parcels are not zoned rural. We believe that the area, as Mr. Wickman has attested to in the first application, is transitioning where more residential uses are common with 5-acre parcels rather than farming agricultural operations. And we believe that it's more feasible to utilize these parcels for residential purposes rather than for farming operation, being that each parcel is only 10 acres in size. And we believe, as well as the hearing examiner, that maintaining these 2 10-acre parcels as agricultural could potentially mean that these parcels may be underdeveloped in the future without the capability of being re-subdivided into 5-acre parcels. I stand for any questions that you have at this time.
So I just want to make sure that if a will was written up and the owners were to pass, then it would automatically go to the 5-acre minimums if that's what's in the will.
That's a possibility.
Okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, Bill, questions? Okay, so Vlad, go over for me one more time. As I look to the west, I see adjoining 2 10-acre parcels. Is that correct?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going by the size. Okay, and then to the north, I've got. It appears those are 5-acre parcels.
Correct.
Okay, immediately to the east, those are 10. 2 of them look to be perfect squares. And to the northeast, we have 5s.
They appear that way, correct. Yeah, and the area is, it has a mix of different lot sizes, but as you can see, based on the aerial overlay, a number of parcels to the north and to the east, northeast, and to the southeast are predominantly residential parcels in nature with homes and outbuildings. And I did conduct a site visit on this property a couple different times when I posted it. It doesn't appear that there is much of a farming or farming operations occurring on parcels immediately to these 2 10-acre parcels, with the exception of the large tract that is located on the northwest corner of Hayden Avenue and Meyer Road.
Okay. Fair enough, thank you. Rand?
Thank you again, Commissioners. Rand Wickman for the record, 2992 East Gotham Bay Road, Harrison, Idaho. And again, pleased to be representing Mr. and Mrs. Andrews on this zone change request. Thank you, Vlad, for that introduction. This is a total of 20.35 acres on 2 parcels. These were created through the Idaho code plat process back in the 90s, and the one on the north is a little bit larger than the one on the south. It's 10.35 or something, and the one to the south is exactly 10. And I apologize if some of this sounds familiar, but since they're separate records, I've got to do it again. And so this area, this is in an area of the prairie, about 1.5 square miles of mostly 5 and 10 acre parcels. The cities are less than a mile or less away: Rathdrum, Post Falls, Hayden, and Coeur d'Alene. The area is mostly zoned ag, but there have been a number of zone changes to rural in the last couple of decades. This one's even closer to the rural zoning to the south. And as I said before, this area was once in the middle of a large agricultural area. The cities have consumed much of that ag land with their growth. Most of the rest of it, whether we like it or not, will likely disappear within our lifetimes, be consumed by the cities. And that's a decision that the cities get to make. You know that you don't get to participate in annexation decisions in any meaningful way. In 1973, when this property was originally zoned, ag was the logical designation. It fit the surrounding area and was believed to be the long-term direction of the area. After 47 years, it is a much different area than it was. There are some large agricultural lands left out there. They are appropriately zoned ag. I support maintaining the zoning on those large agricultural parcels, such as the one to the north. But the subject property is not ag land in the true sense. It has been subdivided into 10-acre parcels. In this particular case, it has CC&Rs that significantly limit agricultural uses. You can have a small number of hobby farming type, animals and livestock, but it's limited in number. You can't really pursue a true agricultural kind of use there. It's surrounded by 5 and 10 acre parcels. Those tend to generate complaints about noise and odor from true agricultural uses. The area has transitioned to a rural character. The zoning simply hasn't moved with it. And when you look at this area, the uses, the lot sizes, it is indistinguishable from other areas zoned rural in Kootenai County. And it's for that reason that this rezone makes the most sense. At our hearing examiner hearing on this, there were some concerns related to traffic that were raised by the public. In that discussion, I made an incorrect statement that Orchard Avenue west of Meyer Road, this segment here, which crosses the subject property, that may be a highway district owned right-of-way. I created a bit of stir with that. I want to apologize to the neighbors, the staff, and the hearing examiner for that. It is clearly owned by the Homeowners Association. That point is now clear in the record. It was important to me to reiterate that correction and apologize. I don't like providing incorrect or misleading information, and so I apologize again for that. With regard to the traffic, we took a closer look at that since the last hearing. My client actually spent a couple of afternoons out there at rush hour, around the 5 o'clock hour, taking photos and videos to get a better feel for what's happening at that intersection. And I have the videos and have provided them to Vlad for the record if you'd like to see them. With all due respect to my client and his cinematography, they are not exciting videos.
Okay.
So let me give you a summary instead. What he did is he took videos in 5-minute segments after 5 p.m. on Friday, August 21. What you see in those videos is variable traffic that comes in waves from the south. Oh, we lost our screen, that's right. But it comes in waves from the south in accordance with the traffic light that exists down there at Prairie and Meyer. And so that releases traffic. And so what you see is groups of 3 to 7 cars coming north. Oh, here's Vlad's got them. That's the video. You don't have to play it, Vlad, but that's fine. You can let it go if you'd like. But what you'll see here is, this one is the 510 one. The cars coming north, they stop at the intersection at Hayden Meyer. The The longest traffic delays in those videos, there's 15 minutes of video. The longest delay you'll see there occurred at about 5:21 p.m., where a total of 6 cars were stopped at the intersection, waiting to cross or turn. The last of those 6 cars cleared the intersection in a little over 45 seconds from the time it first stopped. And that starts about 50 seconds into the 5:20 p.m. video, not this one. Again, we can show you that. It's not particularly exciting, but these are in the record if you wanted to watch them. So what the videos demonstrate is that this is an intersection that functions at a level of service A or B based on the amount of delays there. The impact of the zone change would add 2 more residential parcels to that traffic. That's not enough to warrant a trip generation letter or a highway district, for the highway district or a traffic study. The bottom line is that traffic is simply not a reasonable justification to warrant a denial of this request. Those issues will get addressed to the extent they need to be. They will be addressed with the minor subdivision request that may come. And again, in this case, it would result in potentially 2 additional 5-acre parcels. We've got 2 10-acre parcels, so we end up with a net of 2 additional parcels. These parcels are both south of that intersection. If we were to do a trip generation study, I think you would find that most of the traffic from this site probably goes south as opposed to north to that intersection. But at any rate, that's what we found when my client went out there and spent, like I say, spent an afternoon taking pictures and another one taking videos. And this kind of situation that you see right now, you've got 5 cars there, is not uncommon. Backs up a little more, causes a little more delay if you've got a vehicle with a trailer or something like that. But again, we had some of that in the other videos, and you'll see they move through. I don't doubt that there are worse times. Without a doubt, there are times, and perhaps it does back up at worse in certain circumstances. But again, I think from our random sample here, which was Friday, August 21, I think most of the time it works sufficiently. Anyway, with that, I'll address other issues if necessary in rebuttal. But again, complies with the comp plan, no agency opposition. Cities are okay with it, had no comments. There's significant support in the written comments in the record, and the hearing examiner recommended approval. And so if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I know Mr. Andrews has some comments to share with you as well.
Okay. Any questions for Rand? Excuse me, for Rand?
No.
Okay. So, Mr. Andrews, you want to come forward, please?
I'm Mike Andrews. My address is 7695 North Rood Street in Dalton Gardens, and I'm the rezone applicant. Sirs and Madam Commissioners, as I prepared for this hearing, it occurred to me that there's a fundamental similarity between my simple rezone quest and the much more complicated pandemic-related issues that you've been dealing with as commissioners. Specifically, while there's been much controversy over the effectiveness of various pandemic measures such as wearing masks, there's been almost no debate over the underlying principle that justifies the implementation of those measures. That principle being that the greater consideration is given to the greater harm to safeguard those most vulnerable. Said differently, we collectively agree and accept as civilized individuals that the inconvenience of the many should not take precedence over the necessity of the few. Today, you will likely hear or have heard from the many about their concerns over increased traffic, allocation of natural resources, and quality of life, and I may be pilloried again as a ruthless profiteer. Alternately, I stand before you as the few, hoping to balance a narrative that has thus far been one-sided. As a sun-swept property owner for 18 years now, it's been my continuing intent to have a hobby farm, and consequently, I hope to retain as much acreage as I can. My original plans, however, were complicated by health issues arising from a previously undiagnosed genetic condition That condition forced me into early retirement 20 years ago and, along with the financial burden of pursuing various therapies, postponed my farming plans. It was only last year, unfortunately due to the near death of a sibling, that an accurate diagnosis of this condition was finally made. Thankfully, while future progress of the disease can now be arrested, the prior damage is largely irreversible and requires expensive medication whose current yearly cost is roughly $27,000. This year, my combined expenses for insurance and uncovered medical, which has increased fivefold since the Affordable Health Care Act, is nearly $100 per day. Aside from my personal finances, having tried unsuccessfully to sell a 10-acre parcel for 3 years now, I realize that a rezone is necessary to resolve a catch-22 created by SunSwep's covenants. The essential problem is that the entire subdivision is zoned incorrectly. By its own covenants, SunSwept is defined as a rural subdivision intended exclusively for residential use and specifically prohibits all the commercial uses ordinarily associated with ag zoning. As a result, local interest in these large residential-only lots is diminished because lenders won't loan on what they consider to be excess land. Alternately, most out-of-state cash buyers arrive with romantic notions of treed acreage on a gravel road abutting national forests. Only after a few good winters do they recognize the value of flat land on a paved road with a vista of utilities 3 miles from town. Developers, however, understand this value all too well. Consequently, in the absence of a rezone, the most likely outcome for this property is that it will be land banked by a developer, as has happened in nearby Hutter. In 5 years or so from now, there'll be a request for 40 homes versus 4. And looking ahead, instead of opposing my application, my neighbors should be falling all over themselves to support it. Absent a change of perspective by those opposed, however, I can only reconfirm that my request is compliant with county codes, with SunSwep's covenants, and is reasonable and consistent with the nature of the local surroundings. However, I do acknowledge the inconvenience of waiting behind another car at a stop sign. And as an entirely subjective matter, I recognize that only an individual can say how much their quality of life might be diminished by looking across their pasture and instead of seeing one house, they see 2. Nonetheless, 5-acre residential parcels provide the best buffer possible against future high-density development. It's not unlike a vaccination. As disagreeable as it may seem at the time, a little growth now will prevent a lot of growth later. I realize 5 minutes is not nearly enough to thoroughly address each issue, but I hope that this explanation will resonate with the higher sensibilities of my neighbors and encourage them to treat my request with greater favor. Otherwise, I'm relying on you as impartial judges to consider, in addition to the natural right of ownership, the principle of the greater harm, and safeguard my wife and me from the very real damage we will suffer by being deprived of the full value of our property, a value that can only be realized by putting it to its best and highest use. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Andrews? None? Okay. Tim, did you want to come forward? Tim Vullis, opposed, does wish to speak.
Tim Vullis, 6659 West Orchard Avenue, Post Falls. And I do oppose this based on several reasons. First off, when talking to every single person on our road, which there's 7 landowners there, one person bought 3 10-acre parcels, so he would not have people encroaching around him. The rest of us all have 10. We were under, and to be honest with you, I don't know where we got the understanding that it was, whether it's an old myth or what, 10-acre parcel, it couldn't be subdivided, and, you know, along with our CC&Rs. Okay. Everybody on the road truly believes that. Everybody on our road has been on there minimum of 9 years, I believe. We've all got the same values. We're family values. We have animals and, you know, outdoor space. You know, again, a lot of my reasoning is the prairie's getting eaten up. There was something years ago, and I don't remember the exact time, it's probably been 15, 20 years ago, that there was supposed to be a green space from in the area of Prairie, south of Hayden, and north of Prairie, out heading west. I don't know exactly what that is. So anyhow, based on this, you're looking at more sewers, more water coming off the off the prairie. It is a private road, which I basically maintain on my own, just being neighborly. And it's a subdivision where everybody helps everybody. I help Mike, Mike helps me. Whatever happens, I hope doesn't change our relationship because we're friends and neighbors, as well as everybody else on the road. But we're all really, you know, this is what we bought this area out here for. And this is what we wanted it for. I don't understand, I mean, I understand this here video that he showed. That's average traffic, but it's a lot worse than that a lot of times. There's accidents there on a regular basis. When Kroll built this subdivision, I believe it was in '97, I don't know the exact date, but it was under the old land use. 10 acres, one sewer system, one power hookup for each of the 10 acres. And that's what we all thought we're getting, you know? And when Mike bought the property, knowing that it's across the road, it's not real conducive to using two pieces at one time. I was trying to buy the property, Mike ended up with it. My intentions were for one of my kids to build a house and move there with the understanding, you know, 10 acres, you've got 10 acres forever. But when he bought it, and I don't know what his intentions were, but you're looking at speculation. Speculation happens. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And as far as the Planning and Zoning Commission, I just hope they will take a better look at what's happening going on our prairie. And maybe, obviously, we need to do some readjustment on the planning and zoning, what can be done. Just because it fits doesn't make it right all the time. I mean, there's certain things that, you know, as prior law enforcement, I had to do things that I totally disagreed with, but the law said this is what I had to do, you know. You still have to do it, but, so anyhow, I just hope you guys take in consideration the 7 people that live on the road, where they got 36 people to be and support this, unless they're developers or, you know, family and friends, I don't know. Because we don't have 36 neighbors. There's 7. Across the road, Morrison Estates, everybody I've talked over there, spoke with is against it. Like I said, they're all 10-acre parcels, and there's about, I don't know, 15 or 20 people on that subdivision. So.
Okay, Tim, we're going to need to move on now, sir.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Andrews, do you wish to speak? Okay. David, anyone on Zoom?
David Warnick would be the one. Mr. Warnick, did you want to speak to this issue?
No, we've submitted our public comment.
Okay, thank you, sir. That it? Motion?
I move that we end public testimony and enter into deliberations.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Entering into deliberations. Who wishes to go first?
Well, I think it's pretty similar to the last one we did, but my issue is if it can happen by law already in the case of it being willed, then I don't see a reason why to deny it right now. And I do, you know, hear the neighbors. I have 1,000 feet property line, and I okayed 25 homes in 5-acre parcels on my southern property line. So I totally get the nature of change and all that. And I am much happier to have 25 homes there than 40 homes or 60 homes or something to that effect. So it's still going to be different, but not as bad as it could be.
Bill?
basically what I said the last time, it still applies. It's a balancing act. Go on to say, though, I was thinking about this because it's been brought up this morning, this $50 fee that's proposed. And I have not met anyone who's in favor of it. And that's a heck of a way to stop growth, choke the traffic, make it so miserable up here to drive down the road that nobody wants to come here. And I think the people who propose this $50 fee are not promoting the why we should pass the $50 fee. I would much rather see a 5-cent gas tax, and there we are. I think it would cover what the $50 fee does. But the $50 fee, I am afraid, is going to go down in flames for the wrong reasons. It is matched by federal government, but that's our money anyway. So I'm not going to oppose this, but we're headed for a brick wall and nobody's paying attention.
My turn. No, I think, I think you're both making valid points. And what's interesting is David Callahan's group, Community Development, is in the process of drafting a white paper to address the issues of growth, which, as I said earlier, I hear, and I suspect Leslie and Bill hear them too, on a regular basis. And it's interesting that most of us have added to this problem because most of us are not locals. At least not anymore, it seems. And so, but to this particular case, I have no reason for denial. And I think Bill makes a very valid point. If this doesn't pass and if conditions get much worse, I think you're going to see some pretty strict measures being taken, because if infrastructure can't keep up at some point, what is that? I don't know. We could limit permits. There could be a moratorium, which incidentally is very difficult in the state of Idaho because we have to demonstrate hardship and it only lasts for 6 months. But if we go to a limited permit system, it's going to be by lottery. So someone can come forward and say, I've got 20 acres, I want to make 4 or 5s, fine, into the lottery. 3 years later, that individual comes forward and says, I haven't won the lottery. Too bad, keep going. And there are communities that will do that. That's one way of limiting growth. Another one is for the county to literally buy up land and buy up that land and set it aside for recreation, or lease it, as I think David pointed out Colorado does, to farmers so that the land is productive and the county gets revenue. There's only one problem with that. We have a lake. And agriculture produces nutrient runoff. But the reason I'm bringing this up is sooner or later, this is going to come home to roost. We're going to have to deal with it. But today, I have no reason for denial. Motion.
I move that we approve case number ZON 20-0005, Michael Andrews, to complete a zone change from agricultural to rural.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So case number ZON 20-0005 is hereby approved. Thank you, everyone.
So going to signings?
Okay, the next item, thank you, on our meeting this morning, are signings. Potential action item, ordinance number 552 for case number ORA 20-0001 for the reentry center standards. This is an ordinance change or an ordinance addition, a request by Kootenai County to amend the Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code. Is there a motion?
I move that we execute ordinance number 552.
I second the motion. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Executing the order of decision.
Okay, and then you also have the order of adoption.
Okay, great. Thank you,
Glad.
folks.
Can you go quit your screen sharing?
That's for me, and that's for you. Okay, so, Kathy, you okay? Yeah. So the final item on our agenda, it's our business segment. The one and only item is a discussion on relinquishing AIN 101258, 2500 block of North 16th Street to adjoining property owners. Discussion item. Yeah, Commissioner, right? Do you want one? You want to be a commissioner?
No.
Director Callahan.
Commissioners, bear with me, I'm pulling up a visual. I hope.
Have somebody mute the phone there, that's,
Oh, I'll just go mute them for them. Bear with me. I have to go back into Zoom. And participants, mute all. That even mutes me, but everyone can hear it
Yes.
through this. And this is really just a staff issue. I'll set the stage while I'm getting out a gallery view here, if I can. What this is about is another case where the county's inherited land, and you can see it on the screen now. It's this little blue piece that's effectively a common driveway to all these homes. East Best Avenue is the corporate limits for Coeur d'Alene. And if you look at the southernmost portion of this area, you can tell by the property line that the issue's already basically been dealt with, where these homes actually own the driveway. And I'm suggesting that that's what we ought to do here, is that I know from experience the city won't want this right of way because it's not in their corporate. And similarly, the highway district won't because it has nowhere to go. And so this is a case where the only logical thing to do is to give the property up to the adjoining neighbors on each side. At least that's my viewpoint of it. And so that's what I'm recommending. We could contact the neighbors if you'd like, just see if they'd be receptive to that. But that's as much as I know at the moment.
There's no need to contact the neighbors, I'm right here. I'm not here, I'd like to point out, I am not here as the commissioner's business analyst, I am here as the adjacent parcel owner.
Okay.
One sec. I wanted to give you guys pictures of the condition of this road. It is North 16th Street, and these pictures were taken over the weekend. So,
That's bad.
I personally, as the owner of the two duplexes that are completely adjacent to this property, have no interest in taking over the responsibility of the really poor condition of this road. The county has owned this parcel for over 20 years. It was taken by tax deed in April of 2000. It was offered for sale on September 26th of 2000, and nobody purchased it. So the county has owned it for 20 years and has done nothing to maintain this road. So that's why it's in the condition that it's in. I have tenants in those duplexes that have popped tires, damaged rims, and also had to replace shocks on their vehicles. They've also seen children riding bicycles on this street fall due to the condition of the roadway that is owned by the county. Now, if I were to be the owner of this parcel, it would be my responsibility to maintain it. And I contend that the county, as the owner of this parcel, has that same responsibility.
Okay. So just for the record, for everybody listening in, Nancy Pluff is an employee, and she does report to the Board of County Commissioners in the interest of fair disclosure. I noticed that Pat is not with us for this segment.
If I can pull him up.
Could you please?
Bear with me just a minute. I don't know how I lost my Zoom.
Yes, I am. I'm right
No,
here.
you are. Okay, thank you, Pat. Pat, I guess the first question, and it's a key question that I have, is that of liability. Can you comment on that, please? For the county, that is?
Well, there's always the potential. The fact that we own the property, even though by a tax deed, we've kept it this long, almost 20 years, and haven't, maintained it to the proper standards or contracted with the city of a highway district or a private entity, I think it would be in the county's best interest to sell the property to an interested buyer. Because it has gone through tax deed sale and there were no bids, we can basically, we can convey the property, as we wish, to whomever we wish on such terms as the board may be agreeable to. And so we're not bound to, to sell it by auction or anything like that, because it's already gone through it once. And I didn't really hear the testimony of Ms. Plouffe real well, other than the road's not well maintained. I don't know if she indicated interest in purchasing the property or not, or if the board is interested in just conveying it to her, without payment or with payment. But I would recommend that we sell this property or convey this property as quickly as possible.
But who would purchase it? And why?
Likely would be one of the people that live on the street, whether it's the Plouffes or anybody else. One thing I also want to mention, as we've done in the past, it would be sold subject to an easement in favor of all the property owners that live or that access their property from the street.
You want to comment, Nancy?
I have absolutely no interest in taking on the liability of a poorly maintained street. I have no interest whatsoever. I would be taking on the responsibility of paying for a road the county has not maintained for 20 years. Why would I do that? Now, I would also like to point out that Brenda, also an employee here at the county, owns the property at 2511 directly south of my two duplexes. She has been nice enough, her and her husband, to fill in the majority of the potholes on that street with gravel throughout the years. But it's not her responsibility to maintain a parcel owned by the county. It is your responsibility as the county to take care of that. And to put that on any of the property owners on that street is absolutely insane. You can see the pictures of the condition of that roadway. Right at the intersection of North 16 and Best, the roadway in the first picture that's on there, it's starting to undermine underneath Best Avenue. And that's the county's responsibility.
Good. Brenda, you want to come forward and speak? Yeah. Give us your name and address, because we need that.
Brenda Listman, I live at 25.
Yeah, there you go.
Brenda Listman, and I live at 2511 North 16th Street in Coeur
Go
d'Alene.
right ahead.
Excuse me?
No, say what you want to say. Make a
Okay,
comment.
I have lived in that house for 30 years, and we have always have maintained it. It does not get plowed in the wintertime, and sometimes, I have 3 trucks, and sometimes the snow has gotten all the way up to, almost the door of the truck on really bad winters. So the street that you see right now is not in bad shape. It has gotten much, much worse. We purchased a truckload of gravel and we put it at the end of the street. And there's my husband and myself and another neighbor directly across the street that usually maintains the road. We go walk the whole street with our wheelbarrows and shovels, at least twice a year. And just so, we can get down the street. I always drive on the left-hand side of the street because that's the less potholes.
And the right-hand side is the side that's owned by the county, with the majority of the
when we fill the potholes, we fill all of them, not just,
How much stretch of road are we talking about?
300 feet.
Well, so the length of a football field, in essence. Brenda, anything else you wanted to say?
not that I can think of.
Okay, thank you.
So if there's no property owner that wants to take responsibility of a poorly maintained road and the liability that goes along with it, and the ownership stays with the county, then is it not the county's responsibility to maintain that road? I don't ask my neighbor to come mow my lawn. I don't ask my neighbor to shovel my driveway. That property is mine, and it is mine to maintain. And if I were the property owner of this parcel, I would be responsible for not only the liability, but the condition of that roadway, and I would have to make the improvements necessary to make it drivable. Is the county not under the same obligation as the property owner?
Good point. How many other property owners about, how many are we talking about?
5.
So between you and Brenda, that's 2?
We're 3.
Oh, you're 3?
I own 2
Oh, yeah, because you own
parcels,
2.
yes.
Okay. Do you have any sense from the other?
There would be 4 owners. There's 3 houses and 2 duplexes. Each house is owned individually, and she owns the 2 duplexes.
So
Okay.
5 parcels, 4 owners.
5 parcels, 4 owners, understood. Any thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, can I?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, mainly for the property owners that are there. One, has there been any interest in the 5 property owners pulling together and either petitioning the city for annexation or potentially petitioning the highway district to include this road within their highway district system?
We
Because
have,
that really seems to be the crux of the problem, ownership aside, is that basically this is a road nobody wants.
right, we have no
And so-
interest in annexing into the city. And also, I have contacted Lakes Highway District and spoke to Bonnie, who then spoke to Eric Shandley. They have no interest in this road. It is not built to their standards.
Yeah, well, I know what I think of those, but I won't say it publicly. I mean, essentially, it's a private street. We just happen to become one of the owners because the prior owner back 2 decades ago didn't pay the taxes on it. And, essentially, I think probably the third option would be for the owners to pool together and enter into a road maintenance agreement and, so you can maintain the road to the standard that you desire.
Why
At the
would,
same time, I think, if at all possible, I think the county needs to divest itself of property that it owns.
Pat, why would the property owners come together for a road maintenance agreement on a parcel we don't own?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
The point was, why would they go forward with this, Pat, if they don't own it?
Why would what?
Why would the property owners go forward with a maintenance agreement if they don't own it? And my suggestion, just to get to the quick of this, is that the county ought to gift this property to the adjacent owners. And my suggestion would be to see if we could bring something to the table to make the road proper at the moment before we gift.
And I agree with David, and I would also point out that I think the answer to the why question is because, because you want the road maintained to a certain standard,
Right.
whether you own it or not.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I look at it probably a little bit different because I live on a gravel road, and my neighbors don't have to maintain their road at all. And if I want to drive through the easement that they have given me, then it's my issue if I have any issues on their road that they don't maintain. So while I understand that, I don't think the county has an obligation to maintain the road because I don't think it's a road, it's our property. And if we have road easements and agreements, that's something different. But if there are no easements, the county can say, that's our property, we don't want anybody driving on it.
There is no easement on the property, and the county does own the parcel, and it is not a gravel road. The asphalt is in just such poor condition that it looks like a gravel road, but it is an asphalt road. And the county owns the parcel, and there is no right-of-way, but there is a law that says if you have used the same parcel for 5 years, there is an automatic easement. Yes, David?
I'm not familiar with that. You may be
That might
talking
be.
about something that Pat can weigh in on that's more the prescriptive right.
Right,
And that
Yes.
has to
Right.
do with
And that's-
20
and
years,
that's
as I
20 years,
recall.
Right.
yes.
Pat,
So
you
it's
wanna-
existing.
There's various theories by which somebody can claim an easement to property, but until it's adjudicated and a judgment's entered, that's not a final thing. And so I think, Commissioner Duncan's right, we could theoretically at least fence off that property and put signs saying county property, keep off. And
And I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that that's,
I
way I look
understand
at
you're not suggesting that. I'm saying that's why I said theoretically.
Right.
We could do that, and, that would put, some of the property owners in a pretty bad way. And so obviously we don't want to do that. But at the same time, I don't think it's really the county's place to shoulder that liability when there are other entities that can that do build and maintain roads, that, have that expertise and, have already assumed that potential liability, be it the, city highway district or the property owners themselves. I really don't think, the county is really in a position to maintain that road. I mean, if we were a party to the road maintenance agreement until such time as we could get rid of the property, then that'd be one thing, and that'd probably be the final option. But at the same time, I think the property owners on the street need to own this and figure out what the best solution is.
right, because if we were to charge taxes for that land to maintain it, I mean, that would be something, that's what the road does, that's what the city does. They charge taxes in order to provide that service. So,
Right.
I like David's idea about contacting some partner agencies and seeing what it would take to get it into a better condition than it is. But definitely, I'm not interested in the county maintaining ownership. And road agreements, they're not that difficult and they're not that expensive. I mean, my whole third of a lane, we just paid, each house paid $200 a year for maintenance, and that was it. So it was,
And I would have no problem with that in the future if there was a road maintenance agreement for that. But in the current condition of the road, that's 20 years of neglect by the county. And to
but once
have
again,
us-
I disagree with that concept. It's our property, it's the taxpayers' property. So if the taxpayers choose not to maintain their own property, then, I mean, that's
If it were a
unfortunate.
playground with, that you had taken tax deed to and the playground equipment was in such poor disrepair that it was falling apart, would you allow children to play on it?
Nope,
Or would
rope
you
it off.
do something to fix it?
Rope it off.
And it kind of falls down on the same lines.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here. For me, I'm going to keep it simple. It's doing the right thing. We own the damn road, fix it. I'm not going to sit here and wrestle with Lakes Highway, which Nancy has already attempted to do, and we've had dealings in the past, and Pat, I know where you're coming from, and I'm okay with gifting it. But right now, we own it, we have the liability. Do we want to live with, I don't want to live with that liability. And the fact of the matter is, it is a road. There are people who live on that road, who share that road as though it were a public road. And so, to me, I think we need to make the repair and then gift it. Let's get rid of it. I don't know what the repair is going to cost. I have no idea. I know that, for example, when I looked at paving our daughter's driveway, which is, if you want to call it gravel, 500 feet plus, it was like $26,000. I don't know what it's going to cost to do this. Maybe it's a little bit less. I don't know. It could be a reconstruction. I'm not sure. Did you get a quote?
We did get a quote to replace the road, all 300 feet, last year when we purchased the duplex. That was before we understood the county owned the parcel. And it was $26,000
Oh, my
to
goodness, same as mine.
completely take down the street, down to the dirt and repave it.
So I was wanting to contact Lakes Highway District to find out how much they would charge the county
Yeah,
to
good
do it.
point.
Is what I was
Yes.
talking about. I mean, if they're not interested in taking it over, that's one thing. But that was my reason for mentioning Lakes Highway, not to take it over, but to get a quote
See if they
on.
can do it. Yeah, absolutely. I'm okay with that. Bill?
if nobody wants it and it's as hazardous as it looks like it is, barricade it. Put up these big stone barricades and don't let anybody on it. That's not realistic. I think it's ours and we need to fix it, and it should have been done a long time ago. And if we're not gonna fix it, then barricade it, and I'm sure attorneys will get involved and we'll end up fixing it anyway. So I'd rather fix it.
Yeah, I think it's a small price to pay to minimize our potential liability
Precisely,
on that.
right.
Exactly.
Okay, so to not to belabor it, Nancy, Leslie, you're going to contact Lakes Highway?
I,
I talk to the Eric pretty regularly.
You wanna do it?
Just
That's
give us
fine.
a call.
thanks, David.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, and let's see what we can do.
Thank you, guys.
Okay,
On behalf of all the property owners, thank you.
you're welcome. Brenda, thank you as well for coming forward. Okay, then, public comment. Hearing none. 10:20.
Nancy's over there.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you waving away.
She has a mask on, it's hard to see.
Okay, you're going to beat us up now.
Since this seems to be employee day to speak as public, Nancy Jones, I'm the communications manager, and I do want to speak as an employee and just take this opportunity to ask the board to keep this situation in mind. We have tried several times to initiate a program to really take a look at these parcels that we own.
yes.
We own so many slivers, and the fact is, any one of them could be a liability. Things that we own, culverts that, heaven forbid, someone were to fall into and get injured or worse. I think this is a great time to jump on this conversation and have a bigger conversation about how we can address all of
Dispose of
those
the
parcels. So,
I thought that's what Nancy Pluff was
Isn't that-
doing, is
you're working.
contacting all the adjacent property owners.
But there are driveways, walkways, and such that we own, very similar to this.
and we actually did have a great program going for a while. We'd created a committee of, it was someone from community development, the treasurers, the assessors, legal, and unfortunately, it really takes the input of all of those departments to, the goal was to take maybe 5 or 10 at a time, identify the issues, ones that cannot be sold for various reasons, such as Cataldo mitigation properties, label those on their tax statement as DNS, do not sell, that we know that they've been looked at. But it seems like every time we try to do this, Lori Thomas, Chief Deputy Treasurer, can tell you, over the years, it has come forward and it fizzled. It comes forward and it fizzled. And I think at this point, we're sitting with over 100 properties, I think, of tax deed alone, that I would just impassion you to please give this consideration as a bigger issue than just this one parcel. Just food for thought.
Okay.
And it sounds to me like it may be some time until this is properly resolved. And I'm not advocating barricading the road, but from a legal standpoint, I would definitely think about putting a sign up saying, travel at your own risk, because it sounds like it's risky.
Okay, then? All right. 10:26, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.